What is the best team of Pokemon you could make? One with 6 Eternatus, Eternamax forms, 6 of your favorite Pokemon that you've developed your close bonds to over your adventure, or the team that kid had at recess with 6 hacked Wonder Guard Spiritombs? I want to answer this question with something concrete. I'm going to use math and run an experiment using something called the genetic algorithm to write a simulation performing millions of Pokemon battles to find the definitive, unbiased, and strongest team of Pokemon. We could use any format, but this summer is the Pokemon World Championships 2024. I want to find the team that could theoretically be able to take home the crown. The tournament is right around the corner at the time of recording this, and I want to find out what the best possible team of this format is. The current format allows only 1 legendary Pokemon and 5 others on a team in a best of 3 double battles, where in each battle you select 4 of your 6 Pokemon. We could have chosen any format for this, and it really doesn't matter, but as long as we write the simulation to handle for all the different restrictions and regulations, we'll be fine. You may have seen other videos ranking which Pokemon AI is the strongest, which trainer's team is the strongest, which single Pokemon is the strongest, and these videos are great. In fact, they all probably inspired me to make this video, and I'll leave links to them in the description. But each one of these comes with a ton of caveats, and none of them are really applicable for competitive VGC battles. Double battles are much different than single battles. You have Pokemon that reach the top of the ranking for their incredible support capabilities and overshadow those that may only perform optimally in single battles, where the opponent only has a single target to attack. Clefairy and Indeedee are both at about 10% usage as of writing this, while Garchomp and Blissey, 2 more staples of single battle formats, are at 0.09% and 0.01% respectively in their usage. Now about AI. AI is the big hot buzzword right now. And I would be lying if I said I didn't use ChatGPT at all during the development of my code in this video. But using AI to simulate a Pokemon battle will inherently cause flaws and biases. Now we can make some general assumptions of how a player will perform, but any decision that we force the AI to perform will cause a bias. Let's say you write the AI to choose the best move in each situation. Pokemon has 4 moves. You can calculate which of the 4 moves deals the most damage to either of the opposing Pokemon, and then we'll have to write some extra code to account for items, abilities, and effects of moves like Freeze Dry, changing its type effectiveness. But Quick Attack on a 1 HP Pokemon is always better than a slow, inaccurate Hydro Pump. Even Game Freak's AI is able to handle for this, and any speedrunner would be able to tell you how exploitable that is. And all this is just for damaging moves. In terms of status moves, we can think of something like Amoonguss, which has been sort of the king in past VGC seasons. It has access to a slow Spore, which guarantees a turn of sleep, or if you're under Trick Room, it immediately shuts down an attacker. So would we want to code for when is best to use Spore and taking into account all the items? And wow, okay, that's a lot just for one Pokemon and one move. There are 393 Pokemon in my set of usage data from Pikalytics, with hundreds of moves and a ludicrously large number of possible items, abilities, Terra types, and just about anything else that can factor in. So how do we code to handle for all of these moves and all of these abilities, and to know which move to use at the right time? And well, simply we don't. Rather than using an AI at all, fraught with its holes, caveats, and exploits, we can have our simulator choose only random moves with equal likelihood. By having our simulator pick only random moves, then one battle may go exactly as if it was in the hands of VGC legend Wolfie Glick, or end up swinging Shadow Balls into normal type Soul Game. But the thing is, with enough battles, patterns will start to emerge, and we can definitively say that one team outperforms its competition. So how are we going to design this experiment? In the dataset I'm going to be using, which I've loaded from Pikalytics, there are 393 unique Pokemon with hundreds of moves each, and a ludicrously large number of possible combinations of items, abilities, terra types, and just about anything else that you can factor in. I could, say, list out every possible team composition. There's one that has to be the best, right? With each possible moveset, each possible EV combination, and by the way, a Pokemon has 15 variables that we can consider that affect it in a battle. Each Pokemon has a species, a held item, an ability, a nature, a terra type as of Gen 9, 4 move slots, 6 different EV spreads, and your team can have up to 6 Pokemon. With some of these having hundreds of options each, we'll end up with a very loose approximation of about 500 legal Pokemon, 200 held items, 3 abilities each, 25 natures each, 19 different terra types including stellar, 75 moves on average, and a permutation of 4 of them, so that's actually 75 times 74 times 73 times 72. And then for EVs, there are 515 choose 5. For just one Pokemon, there are 1 octillion, 230 septillion, 723 sextillion, 610 quintillion, 336 quadrillion, 305 trillion, and 792 billion possible combinations. Don't even think about factoring in anything else. And that's just for one Pokemon. If we're going to generate a list of every team of every possible Pokemon, we'd be here till the heat death of the universe. I won't bore you with the math here, but this is what we call an NP hard problem. So we're going to need a clever way to approach it. This is literally a hard question to answer. We're going to need to simplify things just a little bit. First of all, in VGC, only 4 Pokemon come to any battle at a time. We could add logic to select 4 of 6 Pokemon on a team, but that would kind of be identical if we just set every team to just have 4 Pokemon. Consider if a player wins, we don't want the 2 Pokemon that sat on the bench to skew the results in either direction. If it wins, and if it loses, it loses. Next, EVs work in a way at level 50, where they only add stats to a Pokemon in intervals of 0, 4, and then you add any multiple of 8 following that, up to 252, for the EVs to grant at least 1 point. This means 2 EVs will always go completely unused, and a stat with 255 EVs is identical in value to a stat of 252 EVs. We're going to need to code this in as well. Lastly, Pokemon, their items, moves, and stats are not created equally. Ogerpon Hearthflame can only use 1 item, and not a single person is probably going to use Tackle on their moveset and have any expectation of winning. To drastically reduce the number of possible combinations, we're going to use the usage data from Pikalytics, which has collected data from thousands of battles in the current format to determine the most popular items' movesets and give us their relative weighting amongst their peers. Using this, we can cut the possibilities of this Incineroar down from a number larger than the known atoms in the universe down to a more manageable 1,120 combinations. Now, particularly with the EV spreads, we won't limit ourselves to the ones that players have used before. Instead, we're going to use them as the starting point, with their weights influencing their occurrence, and then modify them as the simulation goes on. So, how are we going to find the best team? Well, with a little help from the original best Pokemon in the game, Mewtwo. Well, Mewtwo is the genetic Pokemon after all, and we're going to use the genetic algorithm. Okay, that's a little corny. The genetic algorithm is a meta-heuristic algorithm used to traverse these unfathomably large result sets and find the best set without exhausting every solution. It works the same way you do, or at least how you were born. You take 2 inputs, we can call these chromosomes, and we can produce an offspring from 2 parents. By having each offspring battle one another, survival of the fittest will imply that the best parents will produce the best offspring. That's literally how all of nature works. Next, I've used the source code from Pokémon Showdown, which I've linked in the description, to run these battles on my home computer. Using JavaScript, I wrote a basic simulator that inputs random moves equally from each player, and a winner will be decided. Once a battle completes, we then take the result set, find the top percentage of best parents, and then have them create offspring for a new generation. In my simulation, we take usage data and generate 100 plausible Pokemon teams. Then each one will battle a series of 200 random opponents each. These are generated using the same algorithm. Based on the number of wins each team receives, we use that as their score. Then, by selecting the top percentage of these teams, we can call these the parents. Each parent then will pair with another parent and produce 2 offspring, one to replace each of them. This new set of offspring then create a new population, and the rest of the population size is filled with more new random teams. Then we can have this code run as many generations as we want, but eventually I'm going to want the code to hone in to a single best team. To do that, I'm going to be employing something called simulated annealing, which is a fancy way of saying that we're going to have each team harden as each generation goes on until they are forged into the sharpest blade. Pokemon team. So I got to writing. After a few weeks of tuning and squashing bugs and referring to ChatGPT and more attempts and more tuning and more squashing bugs and removing a few biases and fixing more bugs, I got my simulator working. And when it finally was able to produce the accurate output, let's just say I was shocked. I'm going to run this for 50 generations in my experiment. Doing the math, that's 100 teams doing 200 battles each, 50 times for 1 million battles. So let's see how it does. Each of these took about 8 hours to run on a single thread on my personal computer. I'm sure if we were able to write this for multi-threading and use a much more powerful distributed system, we'd be able to run these significantly faster. Not only did I run this experiment 1 time, but I ran it 5 times because I wanted to see how the results changed as I ran each experiment. So with a grand total of 40 hours spent running this simulation and 5 million Pokemon battles, let's see the results. So ranking the 5 best teams based on the number of wins that they had in their final round, coming in at number 5 with 194 out of 200 wins, is Choice Scarf Kyogre, Specs Chi-Yu, Citrus Berry Sylveon, and Sash Fluttermane. This is a very powerful hyper-offense special attacking team. We see Kyogre with Choice Scarf to launch those fast water spouts, supported by Chi-Yu lowering the opponent's special defense stats. Sylveon and Fluttermane have powerful spread moves as well, and so long as this team didn't go up against someone with a wide guard, this clearly was a strong pick. One interesting thing here are the Terra types. You'll see Kyogre was Terra Psychic. I think this shows that you can really pick any Terra type for this Kyogre and it can succeed, whether it's offensive or defensive. Another surprise was that this Terra Ghost Sylveon was carrying the move Terra Blast with the ability Pixelate, so if it terrestrialized, the attack would be a Ghost type move, and if it didn't terrestrialize, it would remain a normal type move, but then turn into a fairy type move, boosted further, which gives the team many different options. Maybe unsurprisingly here, we see that Sash Fluttermane performed well with max special attack and max speed stat. But the fact that conventional wisdom was shown in the results here is a very good sign that our experiment was designed well. Now, looking at team number 4, With 196 wins in its final round, it's Koraidon, donning an Assault Vest alongside a team of Sun-boosted powerhouses, Air Balloon Heatran, Sash Chi-Yu, and Booster Energy Fluttermane. What I really liked seeing here is just how well synergy is on display. Koraidon's Oracle Compulse ability sets the sun and powers up all three of these teammates. Interestingly, we see Swords Dance on this Koraidon set, even though it's holding the Assault Vest, so it was really only running 3 possible moves it could use. It also has the moves Dragon Claw and Outrage, both of which are Dragon type, and despite fairies being everywhere in the format, I assume its partners helped in covering for this glaring weakness. This team also opted for a lot of bulk in its EV spreads, which is a departure from the previous team that focused more on fast and strong attackers. Now, I couldn't tell you why this particular spread was so strong for each of these members, but we do know that through all the simulations, this was the EV spread that allowed it to survive the most number of hits and fire back with the most damage, and finding a balance between each of them. At number 3, it's Shadow Rider Calyrex, with a very interesting team of Choice Specs Chi-Yu, Booster Energy Fluttermane, and Assault Vest Galarian Moltres. Rather than the more common option of using a fast or strong Calyrex, this one opted for a much more bulky spread and holding the Citrus Berry item, which is not the most common for Shadow Rider Calyrex. 3 of the 4 members of the team also opted for the Timid nature, boosting their speed and then allowing the EVs to be placed into their bulk instead. Grass and Poison Terra types here are considered some of the best defensively, so it's great to see that across this team. And the Stellar Moltres is actually quite good for complementing its dual-type move pool. Clocking in at number 2, with an astonishing 198 wins in its final round, it's Ice Rider Calyrex, back-to-back with the new horses. Surprisingly, this one was using the Assault Vest, but with a single move it was actually able to use, Glacial Lance. You see, all moves have an equally likely chance of being selected in a battle, but Assault Vest restricts us to just Glacial Lance, and as long as we don't use up all 8 of its PP, it's clicking it every turn after turn. Calyrex was paired alongside Booster Energy Raging Bolt, Choice Specs Chi-Yu, and Life Orb Blood Moon Ursaluna. Their Terra types also rolled very defensive options with Poison, Normal, and Flying, showing what many VGC players already figured out, that defensive Terra types are typically preferred to offensive ones. Now in real life, you could use Terra type as a mind game as well to catch the opponent off guard, but I digress. This tanky Glacial Lance spamming Calyrex, backed up with 3 powerful special attackers, let it crush 99% of its opponents. And finally, the team you've all been waiting for, with 199 out of 200 wins, losing only a single game, we have Choice Specs Miraidon. We actually saw a similar Miraidon recently win a regional in the hands of Rajan Ball. Like that team, we see that this Miraidon was also paired alongside Blood Moon Ursaluna. However, this one's holding the Assault Vest. Next up is Chi-Yu with Focus Sash, which is something we saw in the last team, and maybe you'd be expecting Fluttermane to be the last member, right?
Wrong!
I don't know how to quite say this, but it's Wo Chien, the meme snail and most forgotten member of the Ruinous Quartet, makes his appearance on the strongest team in my simulations out of 5 million battles. This shocked me. My jaw was on the floor. The synergy on this team is frankly amazing. Choice Specs Miraidon already packs an incredibly overpowered punch, and when you pair that with a Chi-Yu lowering the special defense of all the opponent's Pokemon, you take KOs that you absolutely have no right to be taking. When paired with the Ursaluna, this Miraidon's electric spread attacks will be unaffected on the Ursaluna while hitting both of the opponents. Because all three other members on the team were special attackers, Wo-Chen's ability would really only affect the opponent. As with previous teams, we see that defensive Terra types dominate here, with Poison, Ground, and Bug, respectively. And Chi-Yu is rocking the Fire Terra type, which will allow its Heat Waves to do even more damage. That was likely able to help it pick up the KOs it needed to get it into this top slot. So, after 5 million battles and a lot of time spent, what have we learned from this experiment? Is this Miraidon the pinnacle of VGC Pokemon and slated to win the World Championship? Maybe. Or maybe not. Pokemon teams are not a monolith. In the array of possible Pokemon teams, they're what we call local maxima. Essentially just peaks that our algorithm is designed to hone in on. But comparing the teams from each of the experiments, there were no duplicates in restricted Pokemon. This really shows just how versatile of a format this is, and show just how many options can succeed. But what I do know is Chi-Yu and Fluttermane are no joke. Fluttermane appeared on nearly every team, but would sometimes be replaced with another strong special attacker like Blood Moon Ursaluna or Raging Bolt. They have about the same special attack stat, but I am not exaggerating with this next one. Chi-Yu was on every top team. The algorithm shows that in terms of power and synergy, you can pair Chi-Yu with any of these aforementioned special attackers, and the metagame really doesn't stand a chance. I hypothesize that this is due to the fact that Incineroar, Rillaboom, and Urshifu Rapid Strike are so popular as a core. Incineroar weakens opposing physical attackers, and the other two have much higher physical bulk than special bulk, at least most of the time. So strong special attackers will perform better. The prevalence of Incineroar being generated on opponents' teams also likely contributed to the fact that the algorithm shied away from common physical metagame picks like Qianpao or Rillaboom. So to answer the question that we set out in the beginning, what is the best team of Pokemon? Based on the results, that's anything so long as you can pair it well with Chi-Yu. Chi-Yu, while carrying a Focus Sash or Choice item along with strong special attackers and a strong and proven restricted Pokemon, has very little counterplay. In all 5 million simulated battles, this Pokemon, this little goldfish, outperformed the rest. Now, if you would like to use the team cores, I'll be leaving the Pokepastes on my GitHub with the rest of the code that I used in the description. Note that each of the teams that I created only have 4 members, and since they're all typically special attackers, I suggest adding a couple of support and maybe physical attacking Pokemon, maybe Incineroar. Now, before we end things off, I want to talk about a couple of caveats and biases in my experiment. I know I said I wanted to reduce these as much as possible, but there's no way to avoid them. Number 1, when you're only picking random moves, you're not picking the move that a player would realistically select in a situation. Moves like Fake Out only work the first turn the Pokemon is active, and moves like Trick Room and Tailwind lose much of their advantage if not used earlier in the game. Next, switching instead of attacking was not an option that I put into the simulator. -1 point for Incineroar and Amoonguss. A lesser used strategy that I excluded from the simulator was the ability to side target your friendly Pokemon. So the combination of side beat up or side heal pulse were not an option. In order for the simulation to work smoothly in its first draft and not go through a million more iterations and bug testing, I had to ban the following 3 abilities: Illusion, Imposter, and Commander. So Zoroark, its Hisuian form, Ditto, and Tatsugiri would not be available to be selected with those abilities, as well as handling the move Imprison. It's quite difficult to handle for. So I took the easy way out and just banned all these. And lastly, 200 battles against each randomly generated meta team is nice, but I don't think it goes nearly in depth enough to expose the most consistently best team. If I were to run this experiment again, I'd want to increase this number in the thousands or hell, even the tens of thousands. To wrap things up, I hope you enjoyed this video where I showed the power of metaheuristics and applied the genetic algorithm in a fun and educational way. Yes, this was a math video, an educational video, all along hiding under the veneer of Pokemon. I actually studied metaheuristics as a part of my master's program and really loved the boundless possibilities that these algorithms could provide. If you'd like to see me make improvements on this experiment, make experiments like this one in the future, or maybe you want to see me try making an experiment where I try to train an AI to play VGC, I'd appreciate if you could like and subscribe and share the video with your friends. I wanted to give a big shout out to Pokemon Showdown creator Zeril alongside Caphotix and Dewabblefett, without whom I would have never been able to have a more perfect open source simulator like Pokemon Showdown. I will also be linking their GitHub in the description. Thank you everyone, and I hope to see you again soon.